Hey everyone, in this video we're going to create a trigger. So first thing we did here is we created a database table. This is not part of the entity framework. Code first applied to this application that we're running in Visual Studio. So yeah, it's our customer here. I'll have this already working. We inserted this earlier before we recorded. And then the next is we're going to create a trigger. So let's create a new query. Say use this database and go alter trigger. We're going to name this DBO trigger customers on DBO dot customer after insert, okay, as begin end. So this is the instruction here is that we're going to create a trigger so that after insert it's going to execute a command here. So our command here is going to insert into DBO DBO dot logs um, last updated no, hold on. No, not that one. Date inserted values is the get date. Okay, so let's create this trigger. Invalid object name DBO trigger customer. Create trigger. Okay, so we created that trigger. Where are we? Where can we find now the trigger? I think it's in the programmability, database trigger, refresh. Where is my trigger? Why is it so slow? Hey, to make it bad, take a sad side. Hey, why is it so slow? Man, views person name. Remember, oh yeah, the trigger is here. To let it, okay, so there's a trigger. We added that trigger in our customer table so that when there's an insert to this table, it's going to insert a data in the logs. And I don't know how many processing thing is going on here. My computer is acting so slow. So now let's run. Let's create a new customer. Let's refresh this. Create a new customer. Let's call this Xavier Charles Xavier could not save changes because the target table has database trigger. Please configure your table accordingly. The target table customer of the DML statement cannot have any enabled triggers if the statement contains an output clause without into clause. Okay, so this is an entity framework thing. Could not save changes because the target table has database triggers. Please configure your table accordingly. Okay, so yeah, so we just learned something here that an entity framework that has a trigger updated with a trigger. How do we fix that? I am using a code first approach to my entity framework and to my entity framework. I have a model called customer. I already created a migration, but uh, and it's already working. Now I want to add a trigger, so a database trigger, so that when I save using DB context save changes, when EF saves to database, the trigger will insert data to logs table, which is not part of the EF model EF configuration. How do I implement this for entity framework? Damn. So implement a database trigger in entity framework, you'll need to follow a few steps. Create the trigger. First, you need to create the trigger in your database. This can usually be done using SQL script executed directly against your database management system. Update your DB context. In your DB context class, you'll need to override the save changes method. Within this overridden method, you'll execute a custom SQL statements necessary to activate the trigger. Here's a basic example of how you might implement this. Okay, save changes, result. Okay, execute your trigger. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Replace exec your trigger. You will appropriate SQL state. Oh man, is this possible? Because I have already implemented this trigger here. So if I delete this trigger, modify. Oh, it's so slow. Yeah, so oh man, why is it so slow? Okay, so let's stop this first. Okay. Um, so if I wanna delete this, delete that trigger, will I be able to save now? Save. Yes, I'm able to save because we removed that trigger. Uh, can we execute this without the on? All right. Yep. Hey, dude. Oh no, not alter, create. Hey, dude. Don't make it bad. Take a sad song and make it better. Can I have enabled triggers if the statement contains an output clause without into? Okay, how to fix this? Remember, the error you're encountering typically arises when you're trying to execute a DML data manipulation language statement on a table customer in this case that has triggers defined on it, and the statement only contains an output clause without accompanying into clause. The output clause is used to return information from notified rows in the DML statement. However, when you have trigger on the target table, there are restrictions on using output without into. This is because the presence of triggers can potentially interfere with the operation of the output clause. To fix this issue, you have a few options. Add an into clause to the output statement. Modify your SQL statement to include an into clause at the output clause. How to implement that if I'm using entity framework? If you're using entity framework and encountering how to address this issue while using entity framework, you can try the following approach. Handle the operation in a stored procedure. Modify your so let's abandon this idea. Let's just ask how to implement um, can we implement trigger in can we implement database trigger and entity framework? I think no, because that's not the purpose of entity framework, right? Okay, so it doesn't provide direct support for database triggers out of the box. EF is an ORM framework that focuses on mapping database entities to the .NET objects and providing a high-level abstraction of database operations. However, you can work with database triggers alongside with entity framework by incorporating them into your database schema separately from your EF code. Here's how you might do it. Define the trigger in the database. You would create your trigger directly in your database management system. Update EF model. After creating a trigger, you may need to update your EF model to reflect any changes made by the trigger. For example, if the trigger modifies a table that is represented by an EF entity, you might need to refresh the entity's metadata in your EF model. Handle trigger effects in EF code. Depending on what the trigger does, you may need to handle its effect in your EF code. For example, if the trigger updates a table that your EF code interacts with, you might need to refresh entities to reflect the updated data. Testing after implementing blah blah blah. Okay, let's give up on that idea and move on. Alright, right, bye.